Hi, and welcome to our visit to Scotney Castle in Kent. I hope you like what we put together. Why not subscribe so you catch more of our travels? As I said, Scotney Castle is in the southeast corner of the UK, in the county of Kent. And if you're in the area, then why not check out Sissinghurst Castle, Tenterton, or head into East Sussex to check out Bodiam Castle and Bateman's, Rudyard Kipling's former home. But we're here to check out Scotney Castle, and on our visit we're going to discover the old castle and moat, the gardens, Scotney House and the walled garden. So without further ado, let's go and explore. And we start in the courtyard with the ticket office, the cafe and the gift shop. And I'll pop a link in the corner to the National Trust website, as not all features are open all year round. But for us, we're going to make our way past the house, don't worry, we will be returning later, and make our way towards the old castle. Scotney Castle is set within the High Weald of Kent in an area of outstanding national beauty, and the old castle and moat lie at the bottom of the hill, and the gardens look beautiful in their autumn golden colours, but we can't wait to head back in spring. Did I mention Scotney Castle was moated? But as pretty as it looks now, I find it hard to believe it was a defensive masterpiece. And now time for some of that history stuff. Records from 1137 list the first owner as Lambert de Scotney, but it wasn't until 1378 when Roger Ashburnham had the first castle built as a fortified home against the French during the 100 Years' War. But the castle may never have been finished, and in 1580 its south wing was rebuilt in an Elizabethan style, and in 1630 the eastern range was rebuilt in an Inigo Jones style. And in 1778 the estate was bought by Edward Hussey, and it was his grandson, also called Edward, who built the house on the hill between 1835 and 43. And it was his decision to create a centrepiece for his picturesque garden to purposefully distress the eastern wing of the old castle to create that ruined look. Now let's take a look around. At times it does look like a fairy tale ruined castle, and the National Trust do a really good job of making it look a little overrun while keeping it perfectly manicured at the same time. There are a number of footpaths that lead through the Scotney Castle estate, and when we return in spring, we'll take the one on the opposite side of the moat, which when we look back will give us excellent views of the castle. That's another good reason for you to subscribe, and if you're enjoying what we put together, then please give us a like. It really does help us. Now at times things get a little confusing. This is referred to as Old Scotney Castle, and the house on the hill is referred to as New Scotney Castle, or just Scotney Castle, but also Scotney House. I think I'll keep it to Scotney House. And now we're going to take a walk back through the gardens up towards that Scotney House. Just one more look at the old castle across the moat, although you can see it as you climb up the hill towards the house. As I mentioned earlier, the house was built by Edward Hussey, designed by Anthony Salvin in a Tudor revival style popular at the time, and it does create a rather impressive country house, and it remained in the Hussey's care until 1970, when Christopher Hussey left it to the National Trust. They in turn converted some of the upper rooms to private flats, and one of the notable tenants was a certain Margaret Thatcher, who used it as her getaway from Westminster. It also remained the private residence of Christopher's widow, Betty, and when she passed away in 2007, the home was opened to the public. We now arrive at the main stone entrance, and I think it's only right that now we take a look inside. And the first room we discover is the hall, and I believe access at present is limited to the ground floor. There's a faint whiff of Agatha Christie about the place, maybe a Miss Marple or Hercule Poirot. One of the things I like about Scotney is it's fitted out with period features from the family collection. As we move out of the hall, we take a sneak peek at the library. We then step into the study where Christopher Hussey edited Country Life. Our next room is the library, and wonderfully ornate it is too, and we notice a picture of a cat. There'll be more of that story a little later. We also notice there's a drink or two dotted around. How very convivial, and perhaps more entertaining than educational. As we continue to explore Scotney House, we find that our next room is the dining room. And you can imagine the ornate banquets and feasts that were held here, maybe the odd shooting party too. Once again, I love the attention to detail, and the other thing that makes these National Trust properties so special are the volunteers. They bring life to the stories of those that lived in this house. And as you may have guessed, this house makes the perfect set for a movie, and in 1979 it featured in Yanks with Richard Gere, and also featuring a Joan Hickson, who later went on to play Miss Marple. into the small dining room, a place for those more informal meals. And as we journey through the home, we start to discover the more modest side of life when Betty lived here. And another little detail, you may notice the windows left open a crack. We'll discover a little more when we step outside. But you'll notice the room bells are here from when it was a fully fledged country house. And once we step outside the kitchen, we find ourselves in the courtyard, and the answer to that open window, the secret entrance for the house cat. And now we find ourselves at the gift shop, and the day's almost over, but not before we discover the walled garden. Built in 1840, this 1-acre hexagonal garden provided fresh fruit and vegetables for the household. Restored in 2007, it now provides fruit for sale and cut flowers for the house. I think one of the standout features of the garden is the vine house, which needs a little bit of TLC. Anyway, that brings our day to a close. Don't forget to give us a like if you've enjoyed what we put together, and why not subscribe so you don't miss when we return in the spring. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, stay well, and happy travels.